We start this new adventure in the year 1996. As we drive through the city, and a voice on the radio tells us that the world had the protection of a hero from another planet who called himself Green Lantern and whose deeds are legendary. The latest one being that he saved the planet from a meteorite. And tonight, they are about to get an exclusive on national television with this superhero who has finally decided to show himself to the world and reveal his true name, Hal Jordan. This broadcast is probably being watched all over the planet, but we are specifically interested in the house of John, a 10-year-old boy glued to the television, while his brother Marcus keeps bothering him to turn it off because their parents are about to arrive and they will surely be punished. But John is willing to accept any punishment as long as he keeps watching his hero. And 2 seconds later, his father comes through the door, and he only has to look at his son's eyes to realize he disobeyed him. John knows very well what is about to happen, but we have no idea how crazy it is. And in the next scene, we see John with an apple on his head, and his father, who is a military man by the way, takes out his gun to shoot, and he better not move. A moment later, the bullet destroys the apple, and the courage shown by his son earns him a hug and a hamburger. And while that happens, we make a 20-year leap in time, and we meet the adult John, a muscular man ready for anything, because fear is not part of who he is. When he leaves the gym, he is picked up by Hal Jordan himself, who is no longer a hero in a green suit. And now he seems to be just an old man with too much freedom, driving as if the city belonged to him. Hal tells him he was on Farron 4, a horrible planet that was about to go through a civil war, but they achieved peace. That is why he arrived late, because he was celebrating too much. It is here that we realize Hal has been training John to become the next Green Lantern, but he will not be ready until the ring chooses him. Yet John thinks this is all nonsense, and Hal decides to show him the truth. The first thing he does is take off the ring and put it on the dashboard. Then he throws himself out of the car and tells him he will see him at the taco stand, letting the vehicle keep going straight down the road and fall off a cliff. Before it becomes a pile of scrap metal and John dies, he manages to put the ring on, and a reflection becomes visible. And shortly after, we see him walking along the road completely unharmed, and he calls his father to tell him that Hal is a madman who tried to kill him. However, his father reminds him that his emotions are his enemies, and he must stay focused at all times if he really wants to be the next Green Lantern. And after this call, the ring glows and shows him Hal again, or at least a holographic version of him. But this Hal does not even know what year it is. He only activated because of a life-threatening danger, and he is here to deliver a message to the real Hal, but he still has 4 kilometers of walking ahead, and John still does not know how to fly with the ring, so that could take a while. The fake Hal gives John the message, "It is hailing in Nebraska." That is what he is supposed to tell him, and if his mind still works, he will know what it means. And at the same time, the real Hal is taking pictures with the fans and eating tacos. When John appears and gives him the message, as soon as he hears that phrase, Hal's face changes and he quickly puts on the ring to fly away at great speed and leave him abandoned once more. With no powers or the ability to fly, John has no choice but to make the trip like any other person, take a plane and drive for long hours to Rushville, Nebraska, the city that is supposedly in danger. When he arrives, he finds a lot of police presence at the stadium, but a policeman thinks he is very tough and does not let him pass. And it is here that John reveals that he is with Hal Jordan, and the officer has no choice but to step aside and let him pass. The strange thing is that John finds Hal sitting in the stands, not giving orders or helping to solve the mystery, just sitting and waiting for someone to call him, but that has not happened in 6 hours. A few minutes later, Sheriff Carey appears to tell them they are no longer needed. The situation is under control, but Hal reveals something that was totally unexpected, that the victims of this event are of alien origin, and that will attract a lot of attention from their home planet. And considering that he is the only one who can talk between planets, he will stay for a while to see what happens. Hal asks her to be a little more thorough with her investigation, and says that for a mass shooting, no one is asking to see the victims. No one is mourning their deaths, and in fact they have not found a single person who knows them, which does not seem strange to him. This gets Hal the authorization to keep investigating, but the sheriff begs him to stay away from the cameras. It is one thing to see heroes and aliens on television, but another to have them in your neighborhood. After analyzing the area for a few minutes, John gives him an exact description of the facts, that the home team won, the visitors came in to cause problems, and there were shots, none of which indicates there are aliens. But Hal has a feeling and he has been doing this since he was wet behind the ears. And he points to a man in short sleeves who is still on the field. It is obvious that it is too cold to be dressed like that, and they can see a hoodie thrown on the ground a few meters away. So obviously, he took it off to go unnoticed. But it turns out the sheriff already knew this, and 2 seconds later, the man realizes they are about to arrest him and starts to run. And John is the only one with the energy and youth to chase him across the whole school, through the gym and up to the upper floors. Luckily for the team, John is not only strong and fast, he is also smart. So he goes around the hallways and lays an ambush, knocking him out before he reaches his car, and the sheriff shows up to handcuff him. The sheriff will allow them to interrogate him, but they have to wait for him to go through the process. So they go to the bar, where Hal shows us a very empty way of using the ring, making money just to use the jukebox and buy beer. John ignores this. He wants to know why they are in Nebraska, and Hal just repeats the same story that he has heard 100 times on television, the elaborate story of how he was chosen to carry the ring. But in the way he tells it, he realizes they are nonsense. But the only thing that seems real is the ending, when he tells him that one night he flew out of his room at a great speed, flying over everything and covering hundreds of miles in 10 seconds until he reached a crash site, where he saw a wounded alien spitting blood that shone in the dark. He handed him the ring, and when he put it on, Hal could understand everything he said. His name was Aben Sur, responsible for keeping the peace in Sector 2814, and now that responsibility was his. But it turns out the planet Earth is outside this sector. In fact, it is a planet not even considered worthy of protection. So a human with the ring was not the best of decisions, but he worked hard against all that to prove he was worthy. After that story, John realizes the same song has played more than 4 times, and a man at the bar is getting angry. But all this is part of Hal's plan, because he wants to be arrested to get the man they arrested at the stadium. A few minutes later, Hal drinks a couple of drinks and gets up to look for trouble, and we can see how they give him a beating among 4, while John talks to a girl at the bar. John enjoys watching him get beaten long enough for the police to show up, and now they just have to wait for him to be put in a cell he can escape from to talk to the mysterious man. While all this happens, John has some intimacy with the girl at the bar in his car and uses the ring to light her cigarette, showing that he does not take being a Green Lantern very seriously either. The next morning, he goes to the police station to pay Hal's bail, but it turns out the sheriff is not as dumb as they thought. She never put Hal in the cell with the suspect. In fact, she locked him in the broom closet, and he is sure he will be angry. But he will be even angrier when she shows him what is about to happen, because the sheriff plans to take him to trial. And that same afternoon, Hal is in front of the judge, about to be declared guilty of several charges of obstruction of justice. Just before the verdict, a lawyer appears and gets a bail, which bothers the sheriff a lot. Not only because the lawyer managed to get Hal out of the problem, but because it turns out he is her husband. The bail is set at $200,000, and Billy, the lawyer who came out of nowhere, promises that the check will be delivered in the afternoon. But there are some conditions, since his father wants to have dinner with Hal that night, so that he can thank him in person for this favor. A few minutes later, the dynamic duo arrives at a huge ranch where the guards have automatic weapons, and everything indicates that they did not get their wealth from cows. In fact, it looks like a complete militia, and this will be interesting. There, Billy and his wife are waiting for them, who introduces them to her son and tells them that her father is waiting for them in the living room. But as soon as she has a chance, Carrie advises him to fly away with his apprentice as fast as he can. He will not want to get involved with this family. In the kitchen, Will, the boss of all this, is cooking some ribs when Hal asks him what all this is about and whether he is building a militia to fight the government, because if so, he does not plan to enlist. But it turns out Will knows that there are aliens in the town, and he has always known it. His presence here only confirms that he was always right, and it is time for them to have a very serious conversation that will save him $200,000. Hal tells him that the galaxy is quite peaceful, but that argument loses its validity with his existence. If there were peace, there would be no Green Lanterns, and Hal has to admit that he is not dealing with a country fool. The mere existence of the space cops, as he calls them, is reason enough to validate everything he has done here. A war is being prepared that will surely arrive, and he is getting ready to hand the ring over to the new generation, or there is another reason to carry that kid around everywhere like a keychain. What has been going on in this town is an act of colonization, And he is the only one who has been realizing it, and that is why he paid to get him out of prison, because he is sure that the man resting in the sheriff's cell is part of an advance team, and they cannot let them get away with it. And it is quite convenient that his daughter-in-law is the one who keeps Hal from questioning him. But fortunately, Will can help with that. While the hero talks to the defender of his land, John takes a few minutes to see if he can get something interesting out of Noah, who is practicing with a ball. After he gives him some advice from his father, the kid manages to pass the ball through the hoop, and that is something he had practiced for weeks. So he is very happy. Unfortunately, his grandmother shows up shortly after, and John cannot ask him anything. The surprise John was not expecting is that the woman he hooked up with the night before in his car turns out to be Will's wife, and now they share a secret that could send them both to the grave, since Will is not a man who tolerates that kind of betrayal. Her name is Zoe, but she still has to find out his intentions. He does not know if her husband sent her last night or if it was just a coincidence, so for now, it is better to keep the secret. When night comes, Will sends them away from his ranch with some meat and the promise that early tomorrow morning they will be able to talk to the guy in the cell, but Hal still does not know what he is planning, and he takes advantage of that moment to tell him that his men were the ones who fought the guys from the stadium. 4 guys no one had ever seen before, armed to the teeth, but he could not see the weapons because Carrie took care of that. It is clear that they are on the same side. Even though Hal finds it hard to admit it, they are here to defend the planet from any invader, and he is not talking about Canadians. He is talking about aliens that want to come and do whatever they want, but as long as there is air in his lungs, he will not allow it. Before they leave, Will looks at John and asks him how his tofu was, and when he answers, "delicious," he mentions that there is nothing better than eating from another man's grill, revealing that he knows what happened between him and his wife. Hal wants to know what he meant, and John cannot lie to him. He slept with his wife, and that does not put him in a good position, considering that they are surrounded by a lot of weapons, and he does not have any to defend himself. Even though he is impressed by his game, he could have chosen anyone else, but John really had very little to do with it. They basically lured him into a trap, and he did nothing to escape. The night ends here. The duo gets out of the meeting alive, and the next morning, Carrie waits for them at the door and is friendlier than usual, guiding them straight into the police station to talk to the suspect. His name is Waylon Sanders, and according to his record, he has been a truck driver for 5 years. But something does not add up in his story, although Carrie made sure to take a good look at his x-rays, and he is 100% human. But what she does not know is that there are more than a dozen aliens that can copy the human body perfectly, so she needs her skills and not police work, and for now, she cannot stop him. So Hal goes into the interrogation room, and at first he seems friendly. He just repeats the same thing over and over again. He lives in the town of Kimball. He only came here to enjoy the game because he is a huge fan of the sport. So Hal starts asking him a lot of questions that might seem silly, but that any human being should know. After all, who has not watched Harry Potter? While this is happening, Carrie tries to understand why someone like John, with a promising future in the army, decides to spend his life with an old hero who clearly has a disorder that should be diagnosed. It is clear that he does not care about anyone besides himself. It is not that he is brave, it is that he does not care about anyone else. It does not mean he is not scared of fear. It just means he does not care what happens to him, and that is not a quality worthy of a hero. By that point, Hal is already getting somewhere. The dead from the stadium were also from Kimball, but the question that breaks him has to do with the president, and it is not common for a southerner who should get upset because the president is colored not to do it and to be calm. And so, a few seconds later, Hal gets him to confess that he is an alien who is very impressed by how humans have an innate ability to self-destruct, and he finds it curious how they worry more about a ball bouncing back and forth than about the wear of their atmosphere. Disgusting beings that eat compulsively, while a large part of the population dies of hunger, so they do not deserve the planet they live on, and soon, something completely opposite to the peace they defend will come to this place, and they will have no chance, as she has none right now, because she has a bomb in her exoskeleton capable of turning the whole police station to ashes. And if they do not let her leave this place, then many people will die. But Hal tells him that he will wrap him in a sphere of energy, and the only one who will paint the walls with his blood will be him. Unfortunately, he is dealing with a deeply intelligent species, and they have fulfilled the 48 hours since he arrived. And it does not look like Hal brought his flashlight, which means his ring is out of power, and his death is certain. But it seems like Hal does not care, He actually seems ready to die, which is quite worrisome. But John realizes Carrie was right. Hal does not care what happens to him, and that is a problem for everyone else. While he jokes with him, Waylon repeats the legacy of the Green Lanterns, making Hal lose his patience and slam him against the glass. But that only goes against him, since Waylon's body begins to emit a beep that gets faster and faster, and it is too late to escape. Before the time is up, Hal asks him to tell him the reason he came to this planet, and the alien admits that it is only revenge. It has always been for that reason. At that moment, Waylon laughs, and Hal throws him to the ground to use all the remaining energy on his ring to create a protective bubble, but it is not that strong, and he cannot contain the explosion, causing severe damage to the police station. Even though Hal uses his body as a shield, the whole street fills with dust and chaos spreads, and we can see Billy running to the station to rescue his wife. But fortunately, John used his body to protect her, and they do not seem to be hurt. For a few seconds, it looks like Hal is dead because they cannot hear him, but luckily, he shows up a few seconds later, unharmed, and telling Carrie that next time she should listen to him, because the suspect is a psycho alien. With an aerial scene where we can see the destruction caused by the explosion, we leave the city for a moment to jump in time to the year 2026, where we can see John driving in the middle of the night on a frozen road, and around him, there is only destruction. Further on, Carrie waits for him in her patrol car, and now the town is a ghost town, but at least his family is fine. Noah is now the field marshal. It turns out he has an enviable arm, and John is very happy for him. However, telling him about his son is not the reason they are here in the middle of the night, and Carrie leads him to the stadium and straight into the stands, where they can find Hal's body, sitting still and frozen with a bullet hole in his head. Although John shows some sadness, the first thing he does is check his hands, but there is no sign of the ring, a ring that was promised to him. But now his future as the successor of the Green Lantern is uncertain, leaving this mystery for the next episode. So we will see you in a week. We will have to wait until next week to find out what happened to Hal and to the ring.